A single mother arrives at the blind date covered in mud, but the billionaire CEO noticed something even stranger. Before we begin, leave a comment telling us which city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story.
Hannah Brooks sat in her 12-year-old sedan, hands gripping the steering wheel like it might save her from the rising panic in her chest. The dashboard clock glowed 7:47 p.m. She was supposed to be at Marcello's by 8. Her best friend Claire had set this up 3 months ago, and Hannah had canceled twice already. Once because Lily had a fever, once because Hannah's courage had failed her completely at the last second. But tonight, Lily was at Claire's house, probably already in pajamas, probably already asleep with her stuffed elephant tucked under one arm. And Hannah had promised herself she would try, just once, just to see if there was still a version of herself that existed beyond mother, beyond teacher, beyond the woman who microwaved the same 3 meals and fell asleep grading art projects. The sky had been threatening rain all afternoon. Now, as she pulled onto the highway, the first drops began to hit her windshield, fat, heavy drops that spoke of something more than a spring shower. Within minutes, the rain became a wall of water. Her wipers, already struggling, began to make an ominous squeaking sound. She should have taken this as a sign, should have turned around, called Claire, apologized to the stranger who was probably already seated at Marcello's checking his watch. But something stubborn in Hannah kept her foot on the gas. She had spent 7 years putting herself last. 7 years since Lily's father had walked out 3 months into the pregnancy, leaving nothing but a note and an emptied bank account. 7 years of being enough for her daughter, while secretly wondering if she would ever be enough for anyone else. The car shuddered. Once. Twice. Then the engine made a sound Hannah had never heard before, something between a cough and a sigh, and simply stopped. She managed to coast onto the shoulder of a dark 2-lane road, nowhere near the highway anymore. The GPS had routed her through back streets to avoid traffic, and now she sat in complete darkness, rain hammering the roof, the engine ticking as it cooled.
Hannah pressed her forehead against the steering wheel and laughed. Because what else could she do? Of course this was happening. Of course the universe had decided that her first attempt at dating in nearly a decade should involve a breakdown on a deserted road in a thunderstorm. It was almost perfect in its cruelty. She tried the ignition 3 times. Nothing. Not even a sputter. She grabbed her phone. 802. 2 missed calls from a number she didn't recognize. Probably him. Probably Ethan something. Claire had told her his name, but Hannah had been too nervous to retain much information beyond, "He's nice, and he runs some kind of tech company, and just meet him, Hannah, please." Her phone showed 1 bar of service. She tried calling Claire, but it went straight to voicemail. She sat there for a moment, watching rain slide down the windows, distorting the world outside into abstract shapes. Then she took a breath, popped the hood, and stepped out into the storm. The rain hit her like a physical force, cold and relentless. Within seconds, her carefully chosen dress, a simple navy blue thing she'd bought on sale 4 years ago and had worn exactly once, was plastered to her skin. Her hair, which she'd actually blown dry for the first time in months, hung in wet ropes around her face. She stumbled to the front of the car, trying to figure out how to prop the hood open, succeeding only in jamming her thumb and getting oil on her hands. She stood there, staring at an engine she didn't understand, in a storm that showed no signs of stopping, on a road where no other cars had passed in 10 minutes. And she thought, very clearly, this is what you get for trying. But she couldn't just stay here. Lily was safe, but Hannah needed to at least make it somewhere with better phone service. She could see lights in the distance, maybe a quarter mile down the road. A gas station, maybe, or a diner? She'd walk there, call a tow truck, call Claire, and forget this entire humiliating evening ever happened. Hannah had just closed the hood and started walking when she heard it. An engine, coming fast. Too fast for this weather, for this road. She moved further onto the shoulder, but the shoulder was soft with rain, more mud than gravel now. Her heels sank with each step. The car appeared suddenly, headlights cutting through the rain. A sleek black SUV that didn't even slow down.
It hit the puddle that had formed along the edge of the road at full speed, and Hannah had exactly 1 second to register what was about to happen before a wave of muddy water erupted from the road and crashed over her. She stood there frozen, dripping. The SUV's taillights disappeared around the bend, and Hannah Brooks, elementary school art teacher, single mother, woman who had finally convinced herself to try something brave, was now covered head to toe in cold, thick mud. She didn't cry, she was beyond crying. She just stood there in the rain, feeling mud slide down her neck, into her shoes, into places mud had no business being. Then she started walking, because the only direction left was forward. The lights turned out to be a small automotive shop, closed for the night, but they had an overhang and a payphone that looked like it hadn't worked since 2005. Hannah used her muddy fingers to order a rideshare on her phone, which now showed no missed calls. Either Ethan had given up or he'd assumed she'd stood him up. The rideshare driver, to his credit, didn't ask questions. He did spread a trash bag over his back seat before letting her in. The drive to Marcello's took 20 minutes. With every minute, Hannah considered asking him to turn around, but she had come this far. She would at least apologize in person. Show up covered in mud and explain that this was not, in fact, an elaborate statement about modern dating, just the universe's sense of humor. By the time she walked through Marcello's doors at 8:47, she had stopped noticing the stares. The hostess's eyes widened. A woman at the bar actually gasped. Hannah scanned the restaurant, looking for someone who might be waiting alone, who might be checking his phone with that particular expression of someone who knows they've been stood up. She found him at a corner table, and even through her humiliation, even covered in mud with her dress clinging obscenely and her hair plastered to her skull, she registered that Claire had undersold him significantly. Ethan Hale was not just nice-looking. He was the kind of handsome that made people turn around on the street. Dark hair, strong jaw, the kind of posture that came from confidence rather than effort. He wore a simple button-down shirt and dark slacks, and he was in the process of signing the check, clearly about to leave.
Hannah took a breath and walked toward him. She had faced parent-teacher conferences with parents who blamed her for her child's failing grades. She had faced Lily's father's family at the hospital when Lily was born, their faces full of judgment and absence of support. She had faced 7 years of doing everything alone. She could face this. He looked up when she was 3 feet away. Their eyes met, and something happened that Hannah didn't expect. He didn't look horrified. He didn't look disgusted. He looked at her face, not at the mud, and something in his expression shifted from resignation to curiosity. "Hannah," she said, "I'm Hannah. I'm so sorry I'm late. My car broke down, and then I got—" She gestured helplessly at herself. "This happened. I understand if you want to just go. I just wanted to apologize in person." Ethan Hale stood slowly. He was tall, taller than she'd expected. For a long moment he just looked at her, and Hannah felt every eye in the restaurant watching this moment, waiting to see how this successful, put-together man would react to the muddy disaster standing before him. Then he smiled, not a polite smile, not a sympathetic smile, a real smile that reached his eyes and crinkled the corners. "Is any of that yours?" he asked, pointing at the mud. Hannah blinked. "What?" "The mud. Is any of it actually yours, or did you borrow it all for tonight?" And despite everything, despite the worst night of her life, despite wanting to sink through the floor, Hannah laughed. "It's on loan," she said. "I have to return it by midnight." "Well," he said, "we should probably get you cleaned up before it's due back." He turned to the hostess, who was still staring. "Do you have somewhere she could wash up? The restroom, maybe? And could you bring us some towels?" 20 minutes later, Hannah sat across from Ethan wearing a chef's coat the kitchen staff had loaned her, her dress drying on the bathroom radiator. She'd scrubbed most of the mud from her skin, but her hair was still damp and there was definitely mud in her ears. The towels Ethan had requested were stacked beside the table. He'd ordered wine and appetizers without asking, some instinct telling him she needed normal things, ordinary things, to ground her.
"So," he said, leaning back in his chair, Do you want to start with what happened, or should we just pretend you always show up to dates looking like you wrestled a swamp? Hannah wrapped her hands around her wine glass. The car broke down, she said, on Route 44, middle of nowhere. I tried to check under the hood, which was stupid because I don't know anything about engines. Then I started walking to find help, and some SUV drove through a puddle at about 60 miles an hour. He winced. That's almost impressive. The timing required for that kind of disaster. I have a gift, Hannah said. She took a sip of wine, felt it warm her from the inside. I should probably mention that I haven't been on a date in 7 years, so even without the mud, I was already planning to be a disaster. 7 years? I have a daughter, Lily. She's 7. Her father left before she was born, and I've been kind of focused on the whole keeping a tiny human alive thing. She paused. Claire probably should have mentioned that. She did? Ethan said quietly. She mentioned you were a single mom, that you teach art, and that you were the kindest person she'd ever met? He smiled. She didn't mention you had a flair for dramatic entrances. This isn't usually my style. Normally I'm more business casual disaster than apocalyptic mud monster. Well, he raised his glass, to mud monsters and broken down cars, and to still showing up. They touched glasses, and Hannah felt something shift. The mortification was still there, simmering under the surface, but there was something else now, too. A lightness, a sense that maybe this disaster was somehow better than any perfect evening could have been. Tell me about the tech company, she said. Claire was vague on details. Ethan's expression shifted slightly, a practiced guardedness that Hannah recognized because she wore it too. It's a startup. We focus on sustainable energy solutions, battery technology mainly, trying to make clean energy actually affordable and accessible. He paused. It's not very exciting dinner conversation. I teach 7-year-olds about primary colors and glue safety. You're going to have to try harder to bore me. So they talked about his work, which he clearly cared about more than he wanted to admit. About her students, the little girl who only drew cats, the boy who discovered that if you mixed enough paint colors together, you eventually got brown. About his mother, who'd raised him alone after his father died, worked 2 jobs to keep him in a decent school district. About how he hated networking events and forced smiles and people who only wanted to know him because of his bank account. About how Hannah had learned to be alone, not lonely. How she'd built a life that felt full even when it was just her and Lily. But how sometimes, late at night, she wondered if there was room for something more. Someone more. By the time their entrees arrived, Hannah had forgotten she was wearing a chef's coat. By the time dessert came, Ethan had told her about the time he'd accidentally pitched his company to investors with his shirt inside out. By the time they finished coffee, 2 hours had passed, and the restaurant was starting to give them pointed looks. Ethan paid the check over Hannah's protests and walked her outside. The rain had stopped. The air smelled clean and new. Hannah's rideshare was 3 minutes away. This was, Ethan said, the strangest and best first date I've ever had. With the mud? Especially with the mud. He paused, hands in his pockets. Can I see you again? Somewhere with less disaster potential, maybe? Hannah felt that flutter again, that dangerous feeling of hope. I'd like that. How about breakfast, tomorrow? Somewhere casual, somewhere you can arrive in whatever state you want. She laughed. That sounds perfect. The rideshare pulled up. Ethan opened the door for her, and just before she got in, he touched her hand briefly. I'm glad your car broke down, he said. Hannah smiled. Me too. She watched him through the window as the car pulled away, standing on the sidewalk in the glow of the streetlight, and she thought maybe, just maybe, disasters sometimes led to exactly where you needed to be. Hannah woke to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Her first panic thought was Lily, but Claire had already sent a message. Elle is fine, still sleeping. What happened last night? You never called. She scrolled through her phone with growing confusion. Messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Messages from people she hadn't spoken to in years. Her social media apps had so many notifications they'd stopped counting. With a sense of dread, she opened Instagram.
The first post on her feed was from a gossip account called Chicago Social Scene. The photo was grainy, clearly taken through Marcello's window. It showed her and Ethan at their table, her in the chef's coat, him leaning forward with that smile, both of them clearly engaged in conversation. The caption read, "Ethan Hale spotted at Marcello's with mystery woman. Sources say she arrived covered in mud. Who is she? Drop theories below." Hannah's stomach dropped. There were 3,847 comments. She scrolled through them, each one making her feel more exposed. Some were curious, some were cruel, some were wildly speculative. Several had already identified her through facial recognition and tagged her actual profile. Her follower count had jumped from 237 to over 8,000 overnight. She called Claire, who answered on the first ring. "Have you seen it?" Hannah asked. "Honey, everyone's seen it. You're trending." Claire's voice held a mix of awe and concern. "Apparently, Ethan Hale is one of Chicago's most eligible bachelors. There are literal forums dedicated to tracking who he dates." "I didn't know. I didn't—" Hannah sat down on her bed. "We just had dinner. A dinner that apparently broke the internet. Look, most of it is just noise, people being bored and nosy. But Hannah, some of them are saying really nice things. There's a whole thread about how romantic it is that he stayed even though you showed up like that." Before Hannah could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "I'm guessing you've seen the circus. I'm sorry, this happens sometimes. Are you okay?" She stared at the message. This happens sometimes. Of course it did. He lived in a world she'd barely known existed 12 hours ago. A world where dinner got photographed and analyzed and turned into content. Another text came through. "If you want to pretend last night never happened, I understand. But if you don't, I know a diner in Bridgeport that no one from that world would ever set foot in. Breakfast still on the table. Your call." Hannah looked at herself in the mirror. She looked tired. There was still mud in her hair that she'd messed last night. She thought about Lily, about her quiet life, about how this kind of attention could complicate everything. She thought about the easy way she and Ethan had talked, like they'd known each other for years instead of hours. She thought about the choice in front of her. Retreat into safety, or step forward into something uncertain. She texted back, "What time?" The diner was called Rosie's, wedged between a laundromat and a hardware store that looked like it had been there since the 1950s. Hannah parked on the street and checked her phone one more time. The photo had made it to 2 major gossip sites and a local news blog. Someone had already created a meme. Ethan was waiting in a corner booth, and when she walked in, his face transformed with relief. "You came," he said. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I thought there was a 50-50 chance you'd block my number and move to another state." He gestured for her to sit. "Thank you for not doing that." Hannah slid into the booth. The diner smelled like coffee and bacon and syrup, the kind of place where regulars knew each other's orders. A waitress appeared immediately, poured coffee without asking, called them both hun. "So," Hannah said, "Chicago's most eligible bachelor. That's apparently you." Ethan grimaced. "It's a title I never asked for and actively avoid. My PR team hates that I refuse to use it for company publicity." "How long has this been your life, people photographing your dinners?"
Since the company went public 3 years ago, since I made Forbes 30 under 30, since I became more valuable as a brand than as a person. He stirred sugar into his coffee. I hate it. All of it, the events, the speculation, the performing. Last night was the first time in months I actually felt like myself. Even covered in mud? Especially covered in mud. He met her eyes. No performance, no expectations. Just honesty and bad luck and really good conversation. The waitress returned, took their orders. After she left, Ethan leaned forward. "I need you to know something. This attention, it's invasive and it's annoying, but it fades fast. Next week, someone else will do something more interesting and they'll move on. But if you want to avoid all of it, if you want me to issue a statement that we're just friends or that it was a one-time thing, I will. No questions asked." Hannah considered this. "And if I don't want you to do that, then we have breakfast and maybe dinner. And we let them take their photos and say whatever they want because what we're doing has nothing to do with them." She smiled. "Okay.
Okay. Okay. Their food arrived, and they ate like normal people, talking about nothing important. Ethan told her about his mother's obsession with birdwatching. Hannah told him about Lily's current fixation on volcanoes. He asked about her teaching with genuine interest. She asked about his work without pretending to understand the technical parts. Halfway through breakfast, an older woman stopped by their table. She wore a Rosie's apron and had the weathered look of someone who'd worked hard her whole life. "You that boy from the internet?" she asked Ethan. "Yes, ma'am," he said. She looked at Hannah. "And you the mud girl?" "That's me." The woman nodded approvingly. "Good for you, showing up anyway. Takes guts." She patted Hannah's shoulder. "Don't let them tell you who you are, honey. You already know." After she walked away, Hannah felt something settle in her chest. Yes, she did know who she was. A mother, a teacher, someone who'd survived hard things alone, and now, maybe, someone who was ready to let someone else in. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said. "Why did you come last night? After everything went wrong, you could have just gone home. Why did you still show up?" Hannah thought about this. "Because I promised myself I would try. And I'm trying to teach Lily that brave doesn't mean fearless. It means doing the thing even when you're terrified." He reached across the table, covered her hand with his. "That's the best answer I've ever heard." They left the diner an hour later. No photos this time. Just two people walking to their cars in the morning sunlight, making plans for the weekend, exchanging numbers they'd actually use. Hannah drove home feeling lighter than she had in years. The viral photo didn't matter. The comments didn't matter. What mattered was the choice she was making, step by uncertain step, to let something new into her carefully constructed life. When she picked up Lily from Claire's house, her daughter ran to her with paint-stained hands and a smile that could light up cities. "Mama, I made you a picture." Hannah knelt down, hugged her tight. "Tell me about it." "It's us," Lily said, holding up a piece of construction paper covered in enthusiastic brushstrokes. "But there's 3 people instead of 2 because Claire said you made a new friend." Hannah looked at the painting. 2 figures she recognized, one small and one tall, and a third figure carefully placed between them, with dark hair and a smile rendered in broad, hopeful strokes. "Yeah, baby, I did make a new friend. Is he nice?" Hannah thought about Ethan's laugh, his honesty, the way he'd looked at her like she was the most interesting person in the room despite being covered in mud. "Yeah, he's nice. Can I meet him?" "Maybe. Someday soon." Lily nodded, satisfied, and ran back to show Claire something in the other room, and Hannah stood there holding a child's painting of a future that hadn't existed 48 hours ago, feeling possibility bloom in her chest like spring. 3 weeks passed like a held breath. Ethan became a regular presence in their lives, careful and gradual. He joined them for Sunday brunch at the diner. He showed up at Hannah's classroom after school to help carry supplies to her car. He met Lily properly over ice cream, won her over by knowing the difference between stratovolcanoes and shield volcanoes, and letting her explain in exhaustive 7-year-old detail why Kilauea was her favorite. Hannah watched him with her daughter and saw something she'd stopped believing in, a man who didn't see Lily as an obstacle to overcome, but as a person worth knowing. He listened when Lily talked. He remembered things she said. When Lily showed him her rock collection, he asked questions that weren't condescending, and when she gave him a particularly interesting piece of quartz, he put it in his pocket like it was valuable. The internet attention had faded, just like Ethan predicted. An actress had gotten engaged, a politician had said something stupid, and Hannah Brooks, Mud Girl, became old news. She returned to her normal life, teaching, parenting, grading endless art projects. Except now, there were text messages throughout the day. Now there were Friday nights when Lily slept at Claire's, and Hannah had dinner with a man who made her laugh until her sides hurt. Now there was someone who asked about her day and actually wanted to hear the answer. She was happy, genuinely, surprisingly happy, and that terrified her more than any viral photo ever could. It was a Friday evening, and Hannah was walking out of a parent-teacher conference when her phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. "Last-minute thing tonight. Charity event for clean water access. I know it's short notice, but would you come with me? I promise to make it as painless as possible." She hesitated.
These events were his world, not hers. But he'd been so patient with her world, sitting through Lily's school concerts and helping with her science fair project, she could do this. She texted back, "What's the dress code?" His response, "Formal, but I'll send a car, and I'll owe you forever." The car arrived at 7. The dress she'd ordered online barely fit, a simple black gown that felt too elegant for her life. But when she walked into the event space at the Peninsula Hotel and saw Ethan's face light up, she felt beautiful.
He crossed the room immediately, kissed her cheek. "You look incredible." "I feel like I'm pretending to be someone else." "Good. That's how everyone here feels." He took her hand. "Stick with me. We'll do the minimum required schmoozing and then leave early." But they didn't leave early, because 10 minutes into the event, a woman appeared at Ethan's elbow like a ghost. She was stunning in the way that required money and time. Blonde hair swept into an elegant updo, a dress that probably cost more than Hannah's monthly salary. And the way she touched Ethan's arm, familiar and possessive, made Hannah's stomach turn. "Ethan," the woman said, her voice honey smooth, "I've been looking everywhere for you." Ethan's expression went carefully blank. "Savannah, this is unexpected." Savannah Archer turned to Hannah with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And who is this?" "Hannah Brooks," Hannah said, extending her hand. Savannah's handshake was brief, dismissive. "Oh, you're the mud girl. How quaint." She turned back to Ethan as if Hannah had ceased to exist. "We need to talk, darling, about the foundation board and other things." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Now isn't the time." "Isn't it?" Savannah moved closer, her hand sliding up his arm. "We have so much history, Ethan. You can't just erase that." Hannah stood there, watching this beautiful woman stake her claim, and felt something cold settling her stomach. This was Ethan's world. These were his people. And she, elementary school teacher in a borrowed dress, did not belong. "Excuse me," Hannah said quietly. "I need to find the restroom." She didn't wait for Ethan's response. She walked away on shaking legs, found the bathroom, locked herself in a stall, and tried to remember how to breathe. Through the door she heard other women talking. "Did you see Savannah?" one voice said. "She and Ethan are definitely getting back together." Finally, they were perfect together. This whole thing with that other woman was clearly just a phase.
"I heard she was a teacher or something. Can you imagine? Ethan Hale with a public school teacher?" They laughed. Hannah stood very still, feeling each word land like a blow. When they finally left, she emerged, washed her hands with shaking fingers, and texted Claire. "Can you keep Lily tonight? Something came up." Then she found Ethan. He was alone now, scanning the crowd, clearly looking for her. When he saw her face, his expression shifted to concern. "I need to go," she said. "I'm sorry. I can't. This isn't me." "Hannah, wait. Whatever Savannah said, it's not what she said. It's what everyone's thinking. I heard them. In the bathroom. I don't belong here, Ethan. That's not true. It is. And that's okay. Your life is galas and charity events and beautiful ex-fiancés who know exactly how to navigate this world. My life is finger paint and parent-teacher conferences and getting excited about 2-for-1 pizza night." She took a breath. "I like you so much, but I can't be someone I'm not. I'm not asking you to be, but you are, just by being you." She touched his hand briefly. "I'm going to go. Thank you for tonight." She left before he could respond, before she could see the hurt in his eyes, before her resolve could crumble. She took a rideshare home, changed into sweatpants, and sat in Lily's room surrounded by stuffed animals and drawings, letting herself feel everything she'd been trying not to feel. She'd been an idiot to think this could work, to think that she could fit into his life without changing who she was, to think that love was enough when their worlds were so fundamentally different. But the word love stopped her cold, because somewhere in 3 weeks of Sunday brunches and late-night phone calls and watching Ethan teach her daughter about volcanic rock formation, she'd fallen in love with him, completely, terrifyingly, and that was exactly why she had to stop this now, before Lily got too attached, before the fall could hurt more than it already did.
Her phone buzzed. Ethan. Please let me explain about Savannah. Another buzz. She's my ex-fiancée. We broke up 2 years ago. She keeps trying to rewrite history.
Another. You belong anywhere you choose to be, including with me. Hannah turned off her phone because reading his words hurt worse than the silence, and because she needed to protect herself and her daughter from a world that would never fully accept them. She fell asleep in Lily's bed, clutching Mr. Elephant, and dreamed of muddy disasters and choices she couldn't take back. Monday morning came too soon. Hannah drove Lily to school, smiled at the appropriate times, taught her classes on autopilot. She'd turned her phone back on to 17 missed calls from Ethan and texts that progressed from confused to worried to resigned. She hadn't responded to any of them. At lunch, the school secretary found her in her classroom. "There's someone here to see you," she said, her eyes sparkling with gossip, "in the main office." Hannah's heart started pounding. She walked to the office on legs that felt disconnected from her body. And there, standing next to Principal Morrison's desk, was Savannah Archer. She wore a cream pantsuit and a smile that was all sharp edges. "Ms. Brooks," she said warmly, extending her hand, "I hope I'm not intruding. I wanted to speak with you briefly." Principal Morrison looked between them with undisguised curiosity. "You can use the conference room," she said. Hannah followed Savannah into the small room, her mind racing. Savannah closed the door and turned to face her, the warm smile vanishing. "I'll make this quick," she said. "Ethan and I have history, real history. We were engaged. We built a life together. What you have with him is a novelty, a distraction, and it will end." Hannah found her voice. "Did he send you here?" "God, no. Ethan is too noble for this, too concerned with being the good guy. But I know him better than anyone, and I know he'll come back to me eventually. He always does, so I'm giving you a chance to end this gracefully. Walk away. Save yourself to humiliation." "And if I don't?" Savannah's eyes went cold. "Then I'll make things very uncomfortable for you. I have friends in media. I have resources. That little viral moment you had, that was nothing. I can make your life a spectacle, your daughter's life a spectacle. Is Ethan really worth that?" Hannah felt ice in her veins. "Get out."
I'm trying to help you. You're trying to manipulate me. It's not the same thing. Now get out of my school before I call security." Savannah's smile returned, brittle and sharp. "Think about what I said. You have until the end of the week." She left. Hannah sat down at the conference table and put her head in her hands. She thought about Lily, about protecting her from this kind of ugliness, about how dating Ethan had already exposed them to scrutiny and gossip, about how Savannah's threats weren't empty, not in a world where Hannah's face had been dissected by strangers for entertainment. Principal Morrison knocked on the doorframe. "Everything okay?" "Fine," Hannah said, lifting her head. "Just fine." But nothing was fine, because now she knew what she had to do. The article appeared on Wednesday morning. Chicago lifestyle blog, mid-tier but well-read. The headline, "Local Teacher's Connection to Ethan Hale Raises Questions." The story was a masterwork of insinuation without direct accusation. It referenced the viral photo, noted Hannah's sudden increase in social media followers, implied she might be using the attention for personal gain. It included a photo from 5 years ago, taken at a school fundraiser where Hannah had bid on a donated weekend getaway package. The caption suggested she had a pattern of social climbing. It was all lies wrapped in just enough truth to be plausible. Hannah's phone exploded. The school phone exploded. By lunchtime, Principal Morrison called her in for a conversation about keeping personal matters separate from professional life. By end of day, 2 parents had requested their children be transferred to different classrooms. That evening, Hannah sat with Lily at dinner, watching her daughter push spaghetti around a plate. Lily had been quiet since pickup, and Hannah knew why. She'd seen the other mothers whispering. "Baby, she said gently. Did something happen today? Lily's eyes filled with tears. Madison said you're a liar. She said her mom said you made up stuff about Mr. Ethan to get attention. She said you're a bad person. Hannah's heart cracked. Oh, sweetheart, that's not true. None of that is true.
But why did she say it? Because sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. They believe things that aren't real. She reached across the table, took Lily's small hand. I need you to know something. I would never lie. Not to you, not to anyone. And Mr. Ethan is a good person who I care about very much. Lily wiped her eyes. Are you still friends? Hannah swallowed hard. I don't know, baby. Because if you're not, Lily said, her voice very small, does that mean he won't come back? He said he'd help me with my volcano for science fair. And there it was, the exact thing Hannah had feared. Lily getting attached. Lily getting hurt. Lily losing another adult who'd promised to stay. I don't know, Hannah repeated, but I promise you, no matter what happens with me and Mr. Ethan, you and I will be okay. We always are. Lily nodded, but she didn't look convinced. And that night, after her daughter was asleep, Hannah made her decision. She texted Ethan. We need to talk. His response was immediate. When and where? Not in person. I can't. She took a breath, typed the words that would end this. I think we need to stop seeing each other. This is affecting Lily, my job, everything. I can't do this anymore. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, did Savannah get to you? Hannah froze. How did you know? Because that's what she does. She manipulates and threatens and sabotages anything I try to build without her. What did she say? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Please, Hannah, let me fix this. You can't fix it. Your life comes with complications I can't handle. My daughter comes first, always. And she's being hurt by this, so I'm ending it before it gets worse. The dots appeared and disappeared for a full minute. Then, I understand. I'm sorry for all of it. Please tell Lily I'm sorry too. Hannah set down her phone and cried for the first time since this started. Not just for what she was losing, but for what had never really been hers to begin with. A week passed in gray monotone. Hannah taught her classes, came home, made dinner, read bedtime stories. Lily stopped asking about Ethan after the 3rd day, but Hannah saw the way she looked at her volcano project, half finished on the dining room table, saw the drawing of 3 figures that Lily had quietly turned face down in her room. The article had faded from public attention, but the damage lingered. Parents still whispered. Colleagues still gave her sympathetic looks that felt like pity. She'd become the teacher who dated above her station and paid the price. She was walking to her car after school on Friday, arms full of art supplies that needed restocking, when she heard her name. Ms. Brooks? She turned. A man in an expensive suit stood beside a Tesla in the parking lot. He looked familiar in that vague way famous people's lawyers always looked familiar. My name is Marcus Chen, he said. I'm Ethan Hale's attorney. Do you have a moment? Hannah set down her supplies. Did he send you? No, he doesn't know I'm here, but I thought you should know what he's doing. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed her a statement drafted on official Hale Enterprises letterhead. It outlined, in clear legal terms, that Ethan had never reconciled with Savannah Archer, that any claims to the contrary were false, and that legal action would be taken against anyone spreading defamatory information about Hannah Brooks or her daughter. It also included phone records proving that the blogger who'd written the hit piece had been in contact with Savannah's office.
email trails showing payments made through a shell company Savannah controlled. "He's not just threatening legal action," Marcus said. "He's following through. The blog has already issued a retraction and apology. Savannah's lawyers are scrambling to contain this because he has evidence of coordinated harassment. He's burning bridges he spent years building in that social circle, all to clear your name." Hannah stared at the phone screen. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because he won't. He respects your decision too much to use it as leverage."
"But I've known Ethan since college, and I've never seen him like this. He's miserable without you, and I thought you deserved to know what he's willing to sacrifice." Marcus handed her a business card. "If you want to talk to him, call me. I'll make sure you're not interrupted." He walked back to his Tesla, leaving Hannah standing in the parking lot with her world tilting sideways. That night, after Lily was asleep, Hannah read the statement 3 more times. She read the evidence Marcus had emailed her. She saw Savannah's manipulation laid bare in black and white, and she understood that Ethan hadn't just defended her legally, he'd chosen her over his entire social world. She picked up her phone, started to call him, then stopped. This wasn't a conversation for phone calls. If she was going to do this, she needed to do it right. She called Claire instead. "Can you watch Lily tomorrow? I need to do something." Claire didn't ask questions, just said yes. Saturday morning, Hannah stood outside Hale Enterprises headquarters in downtown Chicago. The building was all glass and steel, intimidatingly modern. She felt absurd in her jeans and sweater, clutching a visitor's pass the security guard had given her skeptically. She rode the elevator to the 15th floor, her heart hammering. The receptionist looked up with professional disinterest. "I'm here to see Ethan Hale," Hannah said. "I don't have an appointment." "Is he expecting you?" "No." The receptionist's expression shifted to recognition. "You're Hannah Brooks." "Yes." "Wait here." 5 minutes later, Ethan emerged from a hallway. He looked thinner than she remembered, tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. When he saw her, he stopped walking. "Hannah." "Hi." She twisted her hands together. "Can we talk?" He nodded, led her to his office without a word. The space was surprisingly minimalist.
No ego wall of achievements, no expensive art. Just clean lines, functional furniture, and a single framed photo of an older woman who had Ethan's eyes. He closed the door, turned to face her. "I didn't send Marcus." "I know. He told me." She took a breath. "I read the statement. All of it. I was going to tell you after it was finished. I didn't want you to feel pressured." "I know. That's very you." She stepped closer. "I'm sorry I didn't let you explain about Savannah. I'm sorry I ran instead of trusting you." "You were protecting Lily. I understand that." "Do you? Because I'm not sure I do anymore." Hannah's voice shook slightly. "I thought I was being strong, being a good mother, but maybe I was just being scared. Maybe I was looking for an excuse to run before you could leave first." Ethan crossed the space between them in 2 strides. "I wasn't going to leave." "Everyone leaves." "Not everyone. Not me." He took her hands. "Hannah, I fell in love with you that first night at Marcello's, when you walked in covered in mud and still shown up. When you laughed at the worst night of your life instead of letting it break you. I fell in love with the way you talk about your students, the way you love Lily, the way you see the world. And yes, my life is complicated. Yes, there are people like Savannah who will try to make things difficult, but you're worth every complication." Hannah felt tears slide down her cheeks. "I love you too. That's what scared me most." He wiped her tears with his thumbs. "Can we try again? Slower this time if you need, but together." She nodded, unable to speak.
He pulled her close, and she let herself sink into him, feeling the tension of the past weeks finally release. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the afternoon light filtering through the windows. Outside, Chicago hummed with its usual chaos, but inside that office, there was only quiet and certainty and the feeling of coming home. Eventually, Ethan pulled back just enough to see her face. "I have something to tell you." "What?" "I have a science fair project that desperately needs expert guidance. Something about volcanoes. Do you know anyone who might help?"
Hannah laughed, watery and genuine. "I might know someone. She's 7, and she's brilliant, and she's been asking about you every day. I'd like to see her. Both of you. If that's okay." "It's more than okay." They left his office hand in hand, ignoring the curious stares from his employees, rode the elevator down together, walked out into the city together. And Hannah thought about second chances, about disasters that turned into new beginnings, about the courage it took to try again after being afraid. Lily's reaction when Ethan showed up at their door that evening was everything Hannah needed to see. Her daughter launched herself at him with a shriek of joy, talked non-stop for 20 minutes about every idea she'd had for her volcano in his absence, and dragged him immediately to the dining room to show him her progress. Hannah watched from the kitchen doorway as Ethan knelt beside Lily, examining her careful construction of papier-mâché, asking questions and offering suggestions. Watched her daughter's face light up with the kind of happiness that came from being heard, being valued, being safe. And she thought, yes, this is worth every risk. 3 months later, Hannah stood at the edge of an elementary school gymnasium, transformed into a science fair wonderland. Lily's volcano sat proudly on a table near the center, its painted slopes carefully labeled with geological terms that Ethan had helped her understand. But it was the crowd around the display that made Hannah smile. Ethan, in jeans and a Hale Enterprises t-shirt, explaining to a group of fascinated children how real volcanoes worked. A shy boy named Marcus, who never spoke in class, asking questions and actually making eye contact. Lily, glowing with pride, demonstrating her eruption technique for the 3rd time. Principal Morrison appeared at Hannah's elbow. "That's quite a volunteer you've secured for us," she said. "The kids love him." "He's pretty great," Hannah agreed. "And the mother who complained about you last month? Her son specifically requested to be in your class next year. Funny how things change." Hannah just smiled. "Yes, funny."
The fair wound down. Parents collected children and science projects. Ethan helped Hannah carry Lily's volcano to the car, the 3 of them laughing about the mishap with the baking soda that had erupted all over Marcus Chen's shoes. At home, after Lily was bathed and storied and tucked into bed with Mr. Elephant, Hannah found Ethan in the kitchen, making tea. He'd learned where everything was kept, had his own mug now, fit into this space like he'd always been there. She wrapped her arms around him from behind. "Thank you for today. I didn't do anything special. You showed up. You stayed. You helped a classroom full of kids feel excited about science." She rested her cheek against his back. "You chose us." He turned in her arms, looked down at her with an expression so full of love it made her chest ache. "Every time. I choose you every time." They stood in the small kitchen, swaying slightly to music only they could hear. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, there was only warmth and certainty, and the quiet knowledge that some disasters lead exactly where they're meant to. Later, after Ethan had gone home with promises of Sunday brunch and afternoon in the park, Hannah found the drawing Lily had made months ago, the one with 3 figures holding hands. Her daughter had added details since then. A volcano in the background, a sun with an exaggerated smile, hearts floating above their heads. At the bottom, in Lily's careful 7-year-old handwriting, "Our family, even if it's not official yet." Hannah tucked the drawing into her journal, next to the chef's coat button from Marcello's that she'd kept as a memento of the night everything changed. Then she turned off the lights and went to bed, falling asleep with a smile on her face and hope in her heart. 6 months after the muddy disaster that started everything, Ethan showed up at Hannah's classroom with a small wrapped box. Inside was a keychain engraved with 3 words, "Worth the mud." He took a breath. "I want you to have a key to my place. I want you and Lily to know you always have somewhere you belong." Hannah's hand shook. "I need to talk to Lily." That night, she sat with her daughter and asked how she'd feel about a bigger place to live. Lily looked up from her coloring book. "Would Mr. Ethan be there?"
He would, if you're okay with that. Lily considered this with childhood seriousness. Would I still have Mr. Elephant? Always. Then yes. She paused. Mama, is Mr. Ethan going to be my dad? Hannah pulled her into a hug. Would you want him to be? I don't know what having a dad is like, but if it's like having Mr. Ethan around all the time, then yes. 2 weeks later, they moved into Ethan's brownstone in Lincoln Park. The best part wasn't Lily's sun-filled room or Hannah's third-floor studio. It was the ordinary moments. Saturday pancakes, homework at the dining table together, Sunday walks with Lily between them, holding both their hands. It wasn't perfect. There were still occasional articles, still whispers, but then Ethan would come home asking about her day first, or she'd find him reading bedtime stories in silly voices, and she'd remember. This was real. This was worth every moment of doubt. The school year ended with Principal Morrison offering Hannah a promotion, arts curriculum coordinator for the district. More money, more impact, the chance to shape education across multiple schools. That night, over celebration pizza, Lily announced she wanted to be an art teacher / volcano scientist / astronaut. Ethan caught Hannah's eye and mouthed, "Our kid." Hannah's heart just about burst, because yes, theirs. Late August arrived. They sat on the back porch after Lily's bedtime, watching fireflies. Ethan had been quiet all evening. "I've been thinking about that night at Marcello's," he said. "How you showed up anyway." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box. "I'm not asking you to marry me tonight, but I wanted you to have this, as a promise that I'm in this completely." Inside was a simple gold band with 3 small diamonds. Past, present, future. You, me, and Lily. Hannah looked at the ring, then at him. She thought about the past year, the disasters and revelations and second chances. She slipped it onto her right hand. For now. Until we're ready to move it to the other hand. He pulled her close. Inside, Lily called out in her sleep. Ethan touched Hannah's arm. "I've got her."
She watched him disappear into the house, heard his voice soft and reassuring. This quiet moment, this imperfect, perfect life, this family built from disasters and courage. This was worth every bit of mud. 3 years later, Lily was 10. She started asking about her biological father, and Hannah answered honestly, "He left because he wasn't ready, and that was his loss, not yours." "But do I have a dad now?" Lily asked. "What do you think?" "I think Mr. Ethan is my dad, even if it's not on paper." That night, Ethan's eyes went red. "I'd like to make it official. I'd like to adopt her." Tonight, they celebrated the finalization at Marcello's. Lily sat between them, proudly showing everyone the adoption degree. Ethan Hale was legally her father now. After dinner, walking through Lincoln Park, Lily ran ahead. Ethan pulled Hannah close. "Thank you," he said, "for showing up that night covered in mud, for building this life with me." Hannah watched their daughter spin under the streetlights. "You know what I learned? The best things arrive messy and complicated, and if you're brave enough to see past the disaster, you find everything you never knew you needed." He turned her to face him. "Marry me." She looked at this man who'd chosen her and her daughter over everything easy, who learned to braid hair and never made her feel like she had to be anyone but herself. Yes, absolutely yes. Lily ran back, breathless. "What did I miss?" Ethan knelt down. "How would you feel about Mom and me getting married?" "Really?"
She threw her arms around them both. Can I be the flower girl? Can we have volcano cake? They laughed, holding each other in the middle of the sidewalk. This family forged from disasters and second chances. The wedding was small, late September, in the garden where Lily's sunflowers grew tall. Claire is maid of honor, Marcus is best man, Lily is flower girl with Mr. Elephant in a tiny tuxedo.
They exchanged vows they'd written. Ethan promised to always show up, to love them completely. Hannah promised to keep choosing courage over fear. When they kissed, Lily cheered. At the reception, after volcano cake and dancing, they swayed together while fireflies emerged. "Best decision you ever made," Ethan murmured, showing up that night. "Best disaster I ever survived." They danced until the garden was quiet except for wind and the sunflowers. Then they went inside, this family built from mud and rain and the courage to try again, and began the rest of their lives together. Hannah keeps a photo from that muddy night on her desk. She's wearing a chef's coat, her hair a disaster, and Ethan is looking at her like she's the most fascinating person he's ever seen. Lily found it once. "Mom, you look really messy." "I was. It was a very messy night." "But you were brave." Hannah pulled her close. "Yes, I was brave. And that's what matters, being brave even when things are messy. Especially when things are messy." So here's what you need to remember when your own life falls apart, when everything goes wrong at the worst possible moment, when you're covered in mud, literal or metaphorical, and every instinct tells you to hide. Show up anyway. Choose courage over comfort. Choose honesty over performance. Choose the messy, terrifying option of trying. Because sometimes the disasters are just the universe clearing the path to where you need to be. The mud washes off, the embarrassment fades, but the choice to be brave, to be real, to let someone see you at your worst and trust them to stay, that changes everything. Hannah Brooks walked into a restaurant covered in mud and walked out with a future she'd never imagined. Not because the mud didn't matter, but because she decided her dignity wasn't dependent on being perfect. She was enough, exactly as she was. Messy, scared, uncertain, trying. And so are you.
Hannah would tell you the mud was worth it, every humiliating second. Because on the other side was Ethan's laugh, Lily's joy, a life built on honesty. A family forged from second chances and the courage to risk being hurt. Love is worth the mud, always. Now it's your turn. Rate this story from 0 to 10 in the comments. Share which city you're watching from. And if you're facing your own muddy disaster right now, remember the best things are waiting on the other side of your courage. Show up anyway. The universe might just be clearing the path to exactly where you belong.